Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're talking about a really important and relevant topic for our industry. We're talking about competing with the titans, as we've seen many large, well-funded basement waterproofing companies buy other companies, invest a lot into them, and help them grow. And of course, this can feel super threatening. So we have a great topic to kick around today. Some of the things we're going to be talking about, in addition to the changing landscape, is are these real or perceived advantages? And we're going to discuss those advantages that they claim to have and figure out what's our best response to all this and what strategy should we be using to go forward. So in light of that, I know we like to multitask during these webinars, but typically we don't get as much done. And because the content is so relevant for our future, if we could pull back and try to focus on working on our business instead of in our business, I think you're going to get a lot out of this. Quick background about who I am. I am the owner and president of Rainmaker for Contractors. We do internet marketing for basement waterproofing and foundation repair folks. I am an author of an internet marketing book for basement waterproofing and foundation repair folks. I'm the president of the Basement Health Association. I host a podcast called Rainmaker for Contractors, which is made up of success interviews. So, in that light of my almost 30 years of experience in this industry, I've seen a lot, and I'm excited today to share some of the tips that I've learned. All right, so let's get started. So, the problem at hand is the growth and expansion of these well-funded basement waterproofing companies. What they say is that there's a huge benefit to partner with them because they offer a very large and diverse product line and services, and there's a lot of advantages to that. One that comes to mind is, let's say a rep's in a home, they're talking about basement waterproofing. We know gutters are a common issue when it relates to waterproofing. And they happen to also sell gutter replacements or gutter cleaning and items like that. And so there's a reduction in lead cost because it's kind of like you see these coupons for carpet cleaning. It's like $25 for one room. And the goal for that rep to come out is like a $400, sale because they're going to upsell three other bedrooms, two couches, and the drapes. So it can come across that way. Um, we're gonna talk about that, are these real advantages or not? Another benefit that they mention is they have lots of great training programs. And I get this. So let's say that the well-funded basement waterproofing company, they have all sorts of standard operating procedures and all these different services that they do. And some other company that they purchased recently, let's say, is struggling in an area, they'll say, hey, like, do you have a training program for, fill in the blank, right? And that big company can say, sure, absolutely. We can give you our playbook. You can come to the conference next month. We could spend time together on Zoom. And so I could see there's a benefit for some of these training programs. When you get into larger groups, there can be more and better benefits for employees. They could throw in perhaps better health insurance and dental and optical and sometimes days off and all sorts of things that get thrown in there with large corporations. So that could be attractive to get more employees. They claim to have a better customer experience because there's more systems and there's more checkpoints to make sure that the job is on track and the quality is in place. And they claim to have better technology. I could see it. I get it. So maybe they're keeping an ear to the ground, or they've already incorporated or spent millions inside their own company, and they're willing to offer this technology to the companies that they purchase if those companies want to take advantage of the better technology. And another common one is they tend to, because they're well funded, they have large advertising budgets, and it's hard to compete with them. It's difficult when let's say you're an owner of a small waterproofing company, your your rep is driving to the lead and they're seeing your competitors' billboards and they're playing the radio and now their commercials are coming on. And then they get to the home and the TV's playing in the background and your competitors' commercials are playing on the TV. that gets hard. It's like, wow, we're seeing them everywhere. So those are the challenges, and that could feel super threatening. And I get it. But I want to put perspective on this, and I want to come out with a strategy. And at the end of this, I'm hoping that you could be able to identify, one, two, or three different items that you can work on to help improve your company. So you hear all that and you're like, whoa, like that's a lot. Like, man, this webinar better be really, really good because that seems overwhelming. I mean, that seems really threatening. Uh, how do you compete against that? You're just a smaller company. They're well funded. That's super challenging, right? So perspective wise, let's go through those again. Change is inevitable. We know that change is inevitable. Before we go through that, let me say something about change. The only constant in life really is change. And if you've been in basement waterproofing for even just as little as 5 years, you've seen change. It seems like right after we get through a winter, we kind of see a new change on the horizon as we kind of re-enter the season. One big change, which everyone has dealt with in pretty much every single market, there's some huge Amazon warehouse that set up shop, a few miles away, and they're offering way more money to work inside. Like who wants to work outside in the north part of the United States in the wintertime when you could work in a warehouse, get better benefits, more pay, and then it's become very difficult to recruit laborers. So that's a huge change. And if you've been in the industry for over 15 years, you've seen these bigger companies come in and set up shop, expand, or buy other companies. And it's a cycle. It happens actually in every single industry. It's super common for this to happen. So it's nothing new. And there's always been several waterproofers in every market. And I think there always will be. So that's kind of a thing about change. We've seen change before, we've adapted before, and we're going to do it again. What's interesting is it seems really hard and difficult only before you've begun. But once you start making changes, you start adapting, you start creating momentum, and then you look back even after a short amount of time and you say, wow, like I've come a long way. It's been, we're making good progress and we can do this. So it seems most difficult in the beginning. So let me peel back some of the layers and give you my perspective. From diverse products and services. So I owned a waterproofing company for 15 years, and we always competed against companies that were offering all sorts of things. Our standard motto and line was, hey, we don't try to be all things to all people. We specialize in basement waterproofing. We do it great, and we stay in our lane, and that's what we do. Now, if you have, for example, a handyman who says like you hire them to do, I don't know, whatever, replace a toilet in your house or something, and they start going, oh, I could do that, and I could do that, and I could do that. Depending on what it is, I'm going to have some hesitancy. If it's clean a gutter, no big deal. But the second it's going to be a little bit too much money, I'm going to be shopping around because I want to make sure that I'm getting the best or at least the top 25%. And there's no way a company can be like phenomenal at everything. It just doesn't work that way. So I think you're better off by saying that you specialize in your one thing and you don't take on a product line unless you're great at it. And that's how we were successful. Um, Better training programs. You know, it's possible that they have better training programs. Your best bet, though, is to develop your own training programs now. And I want to share a fairly easy strategy and tip to develop some standard operating procedures. I want to quote an author by a book called Buy Back Your Time. Dan Martell uses the hamburger approach. It's the 10%, 80%, 10% of creating standard operating procedures. So you as the owner or the manager, you create the first 10% of some job. And what you're going to do is kind of create the outline. Then you're going to delegate the 80%, kind of the meat and potatoes that gets filled in there. And then when you get it back from that employee, you're going to clean it up and finish it up the last 10% to make it look like how you want it to look. Now you have a standard operating procedure and you could start from there. And as soon as something doesn't go right on a job, you evaluate the SOP and you identify, hey, you know, like when anything happens, there's always like the immediate, like you got to fix what happened, and there's always the system, right? And you have to fix both. But when you get to the system, you have to look at your system and you have to say, hey, what can we improve? Do we need to change our system? So you identify what's missing and you fix it and you get better. That's a good way to have your own training program. And I'll talk about some other training programs that are available to you. More benefits for employees. Can't deny it, it's true. Sometimes people want those extra benefits. From what I've seen, typically smaller companies that don't offer as much benefits are able to pay more because they are not giving away profits through benefit. It's just kind of a different package, right? If you're being offered health insurance, that's part of your pay. So not all things are equal, and different people are drawn to benefits. A lot of people are covered with benefits through their spouses. So there's there's plenty of room for people that some like benefits, some want other things, some like big companies where they feel safe. A lot of people like smaller companies where there's not as much, um, kind of middle level management type of activities. A better customer experience. So I'm not so sure about this. If you have an owner that really cares about his company or her company and really cares about the customer experience and has employees that care, I could see a pretty strong argument for a better customer experience with a smaller company that really cares about its employees and people are engaged. From what I've seen and the studies that I've read, sometimes the bigger the company, the less engaged employees are. They're less involved, they feel distant from the company. They know there's several layers between them, and then there's a boss, and then there's a boss's boss, and a boss's boss, and so on. So yeah, in my opinion, I've seen employees much more engaged in smaller companies. As far as systems, there's an argument to be made as far as a better customer experience. When you have systems in place, and I'm coming from a franchise background where there's a lot of systems in place, like I get that there's checkpoints and there's systems to follow. And if the company follows those systems, then the quality of the work should be better in theory when you have good systems in place. And there's things like the customer journey, like did someone check up on them? How is the communication? Is there communication like throughout the job and after the job? And there's all sorts of things like that you can figure out yourself if you don't have those things. All you have to do is we'll talk about that, but basically listen and keep an ear to the ground and think about how your customer is experiencing your company. All right, another one, better technology. All right, what I'd say about technology, and I'll talk about it more later, is that the price of technology has decreased tremendously over the years. We've all purchased cheap TVs. Every single person in the United States has a cheap TV, which was probably 4 times the price 15 years ago. But when it comes to CRM systems, chat on a website, texting, online calendars, allowing people to schedule on their own, all that stuff is available for very inexpensive. With Google Ads, the Google algorithm is really, really powerful. You could lean on that and tie your systems together and really get the data you're looking for. The technology is available now and it's very obtainable. It's very affordable. Larger advertising budgets, yeah, sometimes, like the scenario I gave you, you have a sales rep drive into a lead and all they do is hear your competitors' ads. That's pretty powerful. That's powerful branding. Can't deny it. And branding does, from what I've seen, it can increase a closing percentage because for some reason, some people they feel safer with brands, even though they're just paying for that person's advertising, sometimes getting a worse product. but I've seen when I owned my waterproofing company, and I really had a pulse on the internet marketing. Like I've seen companies come in and just spend a fortune on Google Ads, and I knew exactly that the type of volume that is obtainable, and I saw the amount of money they're throwing around, and I knew they were not going to last. And sure enough, they didn't. And I imagine that that dollar budget was being dictated by somebody else. Someone else saying like, nope, just keep throwing money at it. We're gonna work it through. And when you're an owner and you have a good pulse for where your money's going, what kind of return you're getting, you're able to fine tune that thing and make changes. And it's not being dictated by like from another state, someone who's more removed. So that's my perspective on those items. There's definitely some strengths in that when they're used the right way. They're not always used the right way. And there's a lot of power in being smaller. One of my favorite lines is big ships turn slowly. When you're a big ship, it's hard to just make changes and adapt. When you're smaller, you can make changes faster. So keep that in mind. All right. I want to cover 10 different areas for you to look at, for you to consider that might help you compete with the Titans. Now, each one of these 10, there's a lot there. I won't go in super deep detail for any of these. But as I go through them, and as you think about where you're at, I would ask you to write that down and make it a target area. If you think, wow, this is definitely something that I can improve on, it's something that's going to help me. Boy, the first one is mindset. If you're concerned, well, it's good to be concerned because that could really channel activity. But if you're scared, if you're like, wow, these companies are, hey, I'm scared. I'm scared about my company. You've really got to fuel that into activity and energy you have to channel that energy towards leadership, towards strength, towards adapting, towards courage, quite honestly. Like having the right mindset is really, really important. And what I love about change, if you see it this way, all change, it's an opportunity to get better. You might lose a key employee, and that's happened to all of us who's an owner. But hang on, change is an opportunity to get better. You might have a competitor come in with better systems, and you're going to be challenged to have better systems yourself, whether it be the sales process, lead generation, scheduling, installation, referrals, whatever it is. They might have a better system, but you're going to need to adapt. So you watch what's going on, you make notice and you improve. And having the right mindset and seeing it that way is absolutely critical. So the first one is having the right mindset. The second one is to be adaptive. What does it mean to be adaptive? You need to listen to your customers, get feedback, and make modifications. Really, really important. So always be looking for opportunities. Love this saying. This saying is it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. It's so true. If you look at any industry, if you look at how companies adapt, the faster you can learn, the more feedback you can get, the quicker changes that you can make. Those are the companies that are going to succeed. And there's a cycle that happens over and over again. It's usually the smaller companies that adapt quickly, that grow. What happens is they become so big that it's harder for them to change because they have all these systems in place. And then there's usually an opportunity that opens and someone smaller can step in. But anyway, I got that saying from this book. It's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. Eating the big fish, how challenger brands can compete against brand leaders. All right, number 3, really important when you're competing against companies that have been purchased. Really emphasize your local presence, how long you've been there, where you're involved in the community, what you do in the community, if there's charities you're involved with, if there's people that you know, if there's work that you've done at important buildings that would be recognized. Really got to dig in the trenches. Someone shared a line at a conference, that said, don't let Wall Street decide what's best for your basement. And you've been in that area serving for how long? How many homes have you fixed? And you know your market, you know your homes, and really emphasize that you have a local presence and you've been there a long time. All right, use the lighthouse strategy. The lighthouse strategy is a strategy where you make reference to a light, a source, someone that would be recognized, someone that would be trusted in the community. You may have a spokesman, you may have waterproof, someone in the community that would be known, would be recognized. You may be referred by a certain group. A new client came on with us just last week and they said, churches refer us to one another all the time. We've done so many churches in the area. And that in and of itself can be sort of a lighthouse to refer that, for whatever reason, we do a lot of churches in the area and make that connection and make that part of your story, the lighthouse, because it's a way for you to lift up your company and to have your company be recognized by using another source. All right, and number 5, before I'm going to ask you to kind of reevaluate and have 5 more after this, but know your target audience. And that involves a variety of things. So, first of all, you need to identify like who really is your target audience. And before you just say, hey man, it's a homeowner who has a basement problem. I would tighten that up a little bit. I would look at I would look at age. I would also look at socioeconomic levels. I'm guessing that you have a tendency to sell to a certain people group more than others. And try to identify who that target is. When we've gone through this exercise, you're encouraged to put a name to that person even, and to name that and have that be internally kind of this is who you're targeting. And then you need to go through all of your communication, your images, your ads, and ask yourself, is this aligned with that person? Is this going to speak to them? And also knowing your audience does involve not trying to be all things to all people and to really stay in your lane. And that again relates to your products and services. What are you great at? Like, what's your superpower? And just focus on doing that until it makes sense, if so, to expand your product lines. But until that day comes, just really stay in your lane and focus on your target audience, and everything in your company, your taglines, your logos, your communication really speaks best to that audience. I have a comment here. Some customers are more comfortable with name brands. It's true. I mentioned this. I was talking to someone this week who does several million a year. And when they're competing against the big companies that are just branding and throwing money around like crazy, he'll say, hey, you might be comfortable paying for their advertising. We take our money and we invest in the highest quality products and services that we can so that we know you're getting the best from us. And that kind of causes a shift in people's minds. Maybe I'm just paying for heavy advertising. I want the best in my basement. So that's worked really well for him. Well, let me pause there. I've covered several items, just 5. There's 5 more coming up. But are any of those need to be on your list where you need to take action? Think about that for a second. So if something's on your list, make sure you write it down, and you want to take action on that right away. All right. Let's proceed and look at a few more here. So up your branding game. I got to give my hat off to these bigger companies because they are so well branded. They have their logo and everything, right? And it kind of comes across with the appearance that they're like super well organized. But your brand is so much more than a logo. And yes, you can put your logo on just about everything, right? You could have your uniforms. You better have a uniform going into a home, right? And you could have the hat, and you could have your tool bag with your brand on it, or like a luggage tag with your business card. These are cues somehow. They give people some peace and some sense of like, okay, this is a really well-run, well-organized company. Employees are disciplined, they're in uniform, and so on. And those are important perceptions to communicate. Perception can be reality for people. So think about your logos, your colors, your images, even your font. These all communicate things. But again, the brand is so much more than just that. It has to do with your reputation, your core values, what you're about, what your mission is about. Are you known for integrity and a high quality service and product? Are your customers absolutely satisfied with you? And they should be able to, people should be able to read the sentiment of your customer reviews. And yes, it's true. Some of these bigger companies, they figured it out and they're really good at getting customer reviews. I can't take that away from them. Oftentimes they're getting customer reviews just on jobs. Sorry, inspections, not even on jobs. And so they just bury the negative ones. When you get your reviews, try to get that sentiment, try to capture the customer's excitement and satisfaction for the work that you're doing. We take over a lot of companies' marketing, and I noticed that many people don't use a unique selling proposition, or yeah, what that is how are you communicating in sort of a tagline, like how you're different. Truth of the matter is people have a lot of options. And so the faster you could say, like, this is who we are, this is how we're a little bit different to stand out, that's going to help you. And it communicates to the people like, okay, I know who these guys are because you told them. And that does go back to your target audience. But especially think about your online presence. Can't tell you how many websites that we've taken over that I'm amazed that they've been able to stay in business as long as they have. Maybe because I'm in the business and I see that, but boy, if I have some choices and I'm looking at a website and it doesn't look like it's been updated for 10 years, even 5 years, I'm wondering about some other things that are going on in the company. So think about your brand and how you're coming across, and even your involvement in the community. That's all part of your brand. All right, number 7. You really need to think about your story. And every time you go into a home, try to slip in your company story. Stories are really, really powerful. Here's the components of a story, a good story. Ask yourself this, what drove you to start your business in the first place? And what gap did you see in the industry? What motivated you? Like you're in the industry and you're saying, oh man, I could do better than this, right? So what gap did you see? And what challenges over time did you have to overcome? And then if you could discuss social proof, like validate that by people making comments that they like this about you, and that validates your whole story. And then tie that in really to your presentation. Every time you go into a lead, try to slip in your story. And I'll tell you why stories are memorable and they're repeatable. Like we remember them. So often sales reps go into home and they're just talking, 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 saying so much. How much of that is actually retained a day later? Not very much. But a memorable story, it's like, oh, remember that guy? He told that story. Yeah, that I like that company. So think about your company story. What is it? How are you different? What really are you passionate about? And tie that into your story and share that with customers. And that's going to help you stand out. Actually, that saying is also from this book, Eating the Big Fish. Believe in the power of a well-told story to move mountains. People remember stories and they tell stories to other people about you. So what is your company story? Number 8, lean on your supplier. Suppliers, I trust you're not just going to Home Depot and just buying your stuff and just installing something. If you have a good supplier, they can be an amazing support for you. I was talking to Jim over at Rich Tech this week, actually, and this is just one supplier. There's other suppliers. Maybe some other people do this, but I know Rich Tech does this stuff. They do private labeling for their customers, and that's not just sticking a label on a box, but that's like the whole thing, the warranty, the manual. It's going to have your company logo on there. That's really powerful. They have graphic designers. They have They make brochures that you could leave with customers or send them out ahead of time. They offer training and certification, warranties, and a great customer experience, and they invest millions into the latest technology. So these are all things you can get from your supplier if you have the right one. This is something that Home Depot is not going to offer you. All right, update your technology. So what does updating your technology involve? What does it mean? It could be your website, just even the impression of it, but especially the customer experience of it. Is the navigation good? Is that are the images good? Is it easy to find stuff? Is there chat? Some people like to use chat. Do you text your customers once you have their phone number and you're engaging them? Do you have online calendars? What is your communication like? These are all technology things, and marketing automation is something that's pretty inexpensive. Like we do some really cool things with marketing automation, not only with customer reviews, but just really simple things like someone fills out a web form. Well, they're going to get a text and an email saying like, thanks for contacting us. We'll be contacting you shortly. Here's our number. And then a couple days later, they're going to get a follow-up email saying like, hey, want to make sure you got what you're looking for. If you have any further questions, please give us a call. If there's a missed phone call during business hours, whoever the owner wants us to, we will send a notification. It happens right away, a text and an email to as many people as they want, because those calls are important and we want those calls to be answered right away. Look at your customer experience and look how you can use technology to make sure that you are receiving your customers' feedback and that they're thrilled in doing business with you. And if there's ever an issue, you want to create so much trust that they're going to go to you first, and so that you can serve your customer best. When it comes to equipment and services, things like notifications over Wi-Fi with a sump pump issue. There's all sorts of stuff that, yeah, I mean, for that, I'd have to go back to lean on your supplier because there's some great technology that's out, and the price of technology has really dropped. So keep that in mind and make sure that you're updated with technology. All right, last one I have for you is to network. So important to network. So many other waterproofing contractors are going through the same thing that you are. Especially we guys, we like to be driving around and not look at our, Google Maps and like, I know where this is and not ask for directions. But if you network and keep involved with people, you're going to be able to share resources. Great way to connect in this industry is in the Basement Health Association. There's a big conference coming up at the end of April. It's April, the last day of April, the first 2 days of May. It's in Philadelphia. I'd encourage you to go to that. The Basement Health offers credentials, certifications, networking, and a whole bunch more. But I would really encourage you to stay connected to waterproofers because we share trade secrets. We could say, hey, what's working for you? And the more you give, the more you get back. It's just how it is. So I'd definitely encourage you to network. All right. So out of those top 10, I'd love to know what your top three are. And then a good way to get stuff done. I'm going to give you two tips here. One is to first start with a list. And then two is to try to touch the top three things in that list every day before you get into your routine. Because so many owners, they walk in and we're firemen and firewomen, we're putting out fires, and the tyranny of the urgency hits us. And we end up just putting out fires. So if you could just even try to touch those top three areas, and a touch might be a phone call, it might be an email that you send, it might be a conversation, whatever it is, some kind of a touch to make progress on those top three. The other tip I'd give you is I often do this. I'll put 10 projects on a board and I try to do them in priority. I can't always get to them in the priority that they are because some take longer than others. But if it's a visual that's on my wall all the time, every day I want to make progress on the top 10 projects that I'm doing. We tend to forget things, so when we put it right in front of us and we know that's a focus area, it keeps us top of mind, and we can take action on those items. So I hope you are able to identify a few items there, and I hope you're able to take action on those. So in summary, remember, it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. So be fast, keep your ear to the ground, get customer feedback, adapt, implement, change, get more feedback, rinse and repeat, and succeed. You can do this, and you're going to look back and you're going to see all the progress that you made, and you're going to have a better company. If we could be of help at Rainmaker for Contractors, if you'd like a free recommendations session, whether you end up going with us or stay with where you're at, totally fine. We're here to help. We're happy to give you an online analysis and kind of identify opportunities for you. Let us know if we could help. All right, I hope that was helpful. Let's make it work to your success.